order this meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. I would note that all commissioners are present except for Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Rabarchak, who are both excused. Would also note that we did meet in executive session to discuss matters pertaining to real estate, litigation, and personnel. We'll begin tonight with a Pledge of Allegiance followed by a moment of silence, and I would ask that the pledge tonight be led by Commissioner Engel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. If there's no objection, in the interest of timeliness, I think we'll make a small adjustment to our agenda, and that is to move promotions up to right before citizens' comments. So as soon as the promotions are finished, we'll continue on with the rest of the program. So we'll turn now to our Public Safety Director, Rob Martin.
Mr. President, members of the board, another great night in the history of the police department, where I will be recommending the promotion of 3 officers. And what I'll do is I'll call them up individually and talk about them a little bit. But before I do that, before I call up the first officer, I know I'm a little partial when I say this, but it's very, very, very difficult to be promoted on this police department, because honestly, all of the officers from 1 to 42 are excellent, outstanding police officers. So what you see tonight is really the outcome of hard work in terms of study for written examinations, preparation for oral examinations under our civil service process. So I just want to preface that when we honor these officers, that tonight we're not just honoring these 3, we're honoring the entire department and every officer, because really, day in and day out, they do an outstanding job for all of us and all of our citizens. So having said that, the first officer I want to call up is Officer Alex Wagner. You can be right here. Come on over. A little bit about Alex. Alex is about a 7-year veteran. And, you know, one of the things that you're going to hear when I speak to all 3 of these officers is, when you accept the role of leadership or want to be a leader, you're taking on a lot of other responsibilities. These officers that are being promoted tonight aren't just officers that come to work their shift, work their assigned patrol beat, and go home. They've taken on a lot of added duties, a lot of added responsibilities, some of them in the form of leadership, to prepare themselves to get to this moment tonight. 7-year veteran, he's a field training officer. In fact, the cadet Jamie Sittler that we have in the academy right now, she graduates the end of June. She will be assigned to Alex when she graduates, and Alex will be her field training officer. He is on the Dauphin County Crisis Response Team as a tactical member. He's one of our active shooter instructors. He's a firearms instructor. He's an armorer. He's a United States Army veteran, having served in the country of Iraq. And it gives me great pleasure to promote Alex Wagner, knowing that reposing special trust and confidence in the patriotism, fidelity, and abilities of Alex Wagner, tonight we appoint you to serve as Patrolman Officer First Class. And that is my recommendation.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Mr. President,
Mr. Engel.
I move that we promote Officer Alex Wagner to Officer First Class. Second.
We move to second. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations. So thanks, Alex.
Appreciate that, don't we?
Officer Julio Ferrafino, come on up. A little bit about Julio. Another field training officer, has taken on a lot of extra duties as well. You've probably heard me refer to him before as the mayor of Montrose Park. And when I say that not only affectionately, but from the perspective of you don't have to have rank on your sleeve to exercise leadership every day. And Julio embraced our permanent beat assignment concept here, took it to heart, and really became an officer to be emulated. He's a 10-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and I've heard Julio speak about his life story. He was the past recipient of the Rotary Club Officer of the Year, and he really credits a lot of his success in life when he was a young man in Jersey City growing up to his Marine Corps recruiter.
Yes.
And I know that he said that Marine Corps recruiter saved his life. And I think that's a life lesson for all of us. So it gives me great pleasure to nominate for Patrol Officer First Class, knowing that he reposes special trust and confidence in his patriotism, fidelity, and abilities, for Julio Ferrufino to be a Patrol Officer First Class.
Is there a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr.
I
Engel.
move to promote Officer Julio Ferrufino to Patrol Officer First Class, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Last time I spoke forever, so this time I just want to say thank you very much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll stand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Julio. Patrol Officer First Class Richard Wilson, and I'm going to need your lovely wife. Commissioners, Patrol Officer First Class Rich Wilson is a 16-year veteran of our police department. He was promoted to Patrol Officer First Class in June of 2012. He's a recipient of the Life Saving Medal, the Award of Merit Medal, and the Order of Honor Medal. He's a taser instructor, an armor, and again, a field training officer. And, a lot of our leaders, if we looked right now at our corporals, our sergeants, our lieutenants, our captain, myself, we all started out in terms of that first rung of leadership as a field training officer, training the brand new officers. It's a critical position and assignment on any police department. Tonight, there's a pinning. And of course, it's important you do this without drawing blood. My recommendation is to promote Richard Wilson to the rank of corporal, knowing that he reposes special trust and confidence in his patriotism, fidelity, and his abilities.
Mr. President,
Mr. Engel.
I move to promote Richard Wilson to the rank of corporal.
Second.
Congratulations.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And congratulations, officer.
It's official. Mr. President, members of the board, thank you very much. We're going to
Thank you,
adjourn
Chief.
for just a brief ceremony downstairs, and I shall return.
Authorized.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys, and thank you.
Congratulations.
Planning Commission. Okay, resuming to our agenda. First up is petitions, complaints, requests from citizens. Anybody wish to address the board tonight?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. Moving on, reports of committees, buildings and grounds. Commissioner Rothrock.
I have no report, President.
Okay. Between that and the next, how about if we seek approval for the minutes for the March 8th, 2018 regular meeting?
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the March 22 workshop meeting.
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those workshop minutes. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Returning to reports of committees, building or budget, finance, and insurance. Commissioner Sanderson.
Yes, we are expecting to hold the next Budget and Finance Committee meeting in early part of next month. More news to come. The idea is that the board, as I have said in the past, will have a much, much earlier idea of the budget instead of going through the normal routine development process review in the fall and then early winter. My hope is to have some expectation. The board should be able to see the modules of the budget as it relates to a 5-year plan. And the expectation, my hope, is that the board will be able to ask questions about what each module of the budget will mean. So tack on this module, take away that module, what effect it will have on the budget in the expectation, the context, that this will be the first part of a 5-year plan, to be a rolling, developing 5-year budget plan. That might be an inartful way to describe it, but meeting in early next month will be a first look at it, and then I hope to roll it out to the members of the board in the summer. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Public Works, Commissioner Napper.
Yes, Mr. President. The Public Works Department report for the month of March. The Public Works Department performed limited sign work throughout the month by replacing damaged traffic signs throughout the township. Maintenance was performed on the township trucks and equipment. They repaired grass and lawn areas in the township right-of-way caused by township plows. Yard waste collection for the month of April is scheduled for Saturday, April 7th and April 21st. As a reminder, the street sweeping schedule is posted on the township website. And as a final note, Mr. President, the entire Public Works Department attended the PA One Call training. The conference provided a forum for Pennsylvania stakeholders such as excavators, designers, project owners, facility owners, locators, public officials, emergency responders, and other professionals to learn about safe digging. There was numerous educational sessions throughout the day promoting the protection of critical underground infrastructure. Presentations and demonstrations on safe digging procedures were offered concurrent to the sessions. This ends my report, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner. Health and sanitation, I understand not much there. Mr. Sanderson?
Thank you. There's no report.
Okay. Administration and Personnel, Commissioner Napper.
No report, sir.
Thank you. Police, Commissioner Engel, anything else?
No report.
Very good. Fire and EMS, Commissioner Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Progress Fire Company received a grant for $12,000 from Firehouse Subs for new turnout gear. This week, the final factory inspection was completed for the new engine that Progress Fire Company is going to receive, Truck 32. And our emergency vehicle technician, Chief Rod Calhoun, found some items that needed to be addressed prior to delivery. And most of those, when most of those are fixed, the truck should be leaving the factory in Wisconsin next week, so we will have that soon. And on April 18th, Fire Marshal Drees will be conducting integrated active shooter response with the police department, fire department, and our EMS personnel. And just like to say a word of thank you to the police, fire, and EMS for their responses on a daily basis and everything they do for us. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Recreation, our Recreation Committee is not here tonight. The only thing I would have is that a reminder that baseball starts this coming Saturday. Opening ceremonies, always great to go to, start at 10 a.m. at Christian McNaughton Park. It's for youth baseball and softball as well. And can't wait to see Commissioner Fleming throughout the first ball and be his coach as usual, be his coach self. Do you have anything else on the recreation front, Mr. Krasser?
Nothing else, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Planning and Zoning, Commissioner Rothrock.
Yes, Mr. President, a meeting of the Planning Commission was held on the 26th of March. There were three major items of discussion. One was a subdivision plan proposed by Richard Angino, which we're going to talk about later this evening. There was a text amendment for brew pubs and microbrewery uses, which, as I understood it, was primarily to bring our ordinances in line with state definitions of what a microbrewery and there also was a draft ordinance that we looked at on bee and chicken keeping, which led to some lively discussion. And it was something was proposed by the students at Widener, and something just for us to consider and talk about, I think. No action was taken on either of those second and third items. My report.
Very good, thank you. All right, bids and agreements. Number one is T.R. Stoner, general contractor. This is the Veterans Park and Restrooms Improvement Project. They are seeking application for payment number 3. Mr. Gruber?
Mr. President, members of the board, you have before you payment application number 3 for T.R. Stoner, general contractor for the ongoing project at Veterans Park, which will be an upgrade of the restrooms and other site facilities and utilities. And the amount that is recommended for payment is $91,700.10. The work is proceeding along well, and we would recommend that payment be made.
Move to pay.
Second.
Moved and second. Any comment? When's the estimated completion date of the project, Mr.
We're
Gruber?
looking at somewhere around June to July.
Okay.
So it's about 40% complete right now. As the weather improves, hopefully it will. The speed of the work will improve, and midsummer, early to midsummer.
Snowed early this week. I understand.
Contractor's well aware of that.
Right.
It's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow.
There we go.
There you go. You had to say it.
Yeah, snowfall on Monday to 80 on Friday. That's great.
All right, any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Capital Region Council of Governments sent along some correspondence regarding the Comcast cable franchise renewal. Mr. Kratzer.
Yes, Mr. President. As the board is aware, the current cable franchise agreement with Comcast expires September the 15th of 2020. Historically speaking, the Cohen Law Group has represented on a joint basis the member municipalities of the Capital Region Council of Governments for purposes of negotiating franchise agreements with the respective cable providers, and by virtue of that has extended kind of a bulk pricing approach to us as a result of doing that work on behalf of a number of member municipalities. Again, you have a proposal before you from Cohen Law Group. Price is a flat fee price. That price would range, and when I say range at this point, the price is affected by the level of participation amongst the members. But at this point, the price would be anywhere from $7,800 to $9,400. And there have already been 9 municipalities that have opted in to the kind of bulk negotiation approach. CapCog is anticipating that at least 26 municipalities will opt in, which is the highest level of bulk pricing that's available per the agreement, which again would reduce our cost to about $7,800 for Cohen Law Group to represent us in the negotiations with Comcast. Staff is recommending the engagement of Cohen Law Group as part of the cooperative effort through the Capital Region Council of Governments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Dave, I'm not familiar with this. What is this franchise agreement? Is it to provide cable TV service?
Yes, it's to
Plus
provide
or
cable
internet?
TV service, internet, yes. It has to do with the utilization of the township's public right-of-way. That's why you grant a franchise. Frank can speak to this perhaps better than I can if you...
Try. The cable business is regulated basically at 2 places. One is the federal government and also at the local government, oddly enough. That is, wherever you operate cable service, you have to have a franchise agreement with the municipality in which you operate. So both Verizon and Comcast. In fact, there's a third. We have a cable agreement with the McNaughton Cable Company. Goes back probably 30 or 40 years. I don't think they've ever started up, but there is one. And basically, you have to have that agreement in place. And what it does, it can't touch rates, but it can assure customer service because oversight of cable operations in a municipality falls to the municipality. So basically, it's within our power to assure compliance and customer service regulations and compliance with any requirements such as like PEG channels, build-out requirements, and that sort of thing. So it's a little known, but there's a lot of responsibility and potential on the part of the local government.
PEG channel being local government channel.
Right. Yep. Like WHPG Channel 20, for instance. That's a result of a PEG agreement that we reached. Any other questions? Was there a motion?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and at the price ranges that Mr. Kratzer outlined. And obviously, the more municipalities that opt in out of the 41 in the COG, the lower the price will be. But it is a flat rate, so at least there's some certainty in it. All right, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. SB and Company auditor renewal. Dave?
Yeah, so I don't know how much detail you want me to go in on this, but again, this relates to the audit of the year ended December 31st, 2017. A number of years ago, the township had gone out for a request for proposals for auditing services, in which SB was the selected provider through the RFP process. And it was a multi-year contract. The first 3 years, which were essentially part of the guarantee, if you will, and then years 4 and 5, which this would be the audit of last year would be the 4th year in which they would be performing auditing services for you. Was an optional year. But as part of their RFP response, they had provided you with pricing throughout the entire time, the 5-year time horizon that they were proposing to provide service to you. So again, this relates to the audit of the year that ended December 31st, 2017. Again, staff is recommending engage SB for purposes of this work. The price is at the amount of $21,210. Be happy to address any questions that you have relative to this.
My only comment, Mr. President, is that I think they've become very adept at understanding township operations, and I would make a motion to support this renewal.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
The only other thing I would say is that we do, I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, but we do periodically, even though we have a relationship, we do touch base with other auditing firms to kind of sanity check, if you will, the rate that's being provided. And this is competitive from a market perspective, given the size that
And this audit is just for the township side and not the authority side?
it is just the township side. That is correct. Yep.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. PA DCED Municipal Assistance Program Agreement.
Yeah, this is part of Sustainable Susquehanna 2030, which is the township's comprehensive planning effort that's currently underway. As the board is aware, to offset the cost associated with that planning effort, township staff, under your direction, applied for funding
good idea.
To offset that cost. And we've recently received word that we've been awarded $50,000 through the Department of Community and Economic Development for purposes of offsetting the cost associated with the development of Sustainable Susquehanna 2030. Again, the total funding that we've received to date for this project between the two funding sources is about $90,000 of funding. To put that in perspective, the consulting cost, based on the proposal that you had accepted from Michael Baker, was about $99,000. So virtually 90% of the cost associated with this important community effort is being funded through external funding sources. So again, tonight we're seeking authorization to execute.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Pine.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Fleming. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I recuse myself.
Understood. And finally, under bids and agreements, the Fort Hunter rental agreement for Susquehanna Centennial, Sustainable Susquehanna 2030 for the open house that we're going to be having.
Yeah, there's three contracts here, all relating to public outreach or portions of the public outreach concerning the plan. One relates to one of the components that we're using is a public workshop. There are public workshops scheduled, and all of this is available on the township website. And we can distribute an email as well to provide dates so that you can distribute it to your respective constituencies. The first public workshop is scheduled for May the 8th. That is scheduled here, trying to hold a session in the northern portion of the township and a session in the southern portion of the township. That's 6 o'clock, 6 to 8. We're expecting a 2-hour time frame. And then the subsequent day on May the 9th, there will be a second public workshop that we're proposing to be held at First Alliance Church, which is in the southern portion of the township. So there is a contract here for First Alliance as well, which is the 9th. There is no cost associated with the utilization of the facility. It's just their standard lease rental agreement. We have to provide, evidence of insurance, those kinds of things, but they will allow us to utilize the building at no cost. The other component of some of the public outreach strategy is an open house, and we're intending to have that in June. It's June the 13th, and that's intended to be a much more kind of casual event, family kind of fun event. There'll be games, there'll be food, there'll be a host of different activities. And we're proposing to host that at Fort Hunter Park, which is in Susquehanna Township, which is a county-owned facility. Again, there's a contract in your packet for utilization of that facility. Again, there is no cost for that facility. Dauphin County is graciously sponsoring the venue, if you will, as part of that effort. And then finally, there's an agreement in your, the final agreement, which again relates to the open house. Have the chicken truck present at the open house, which is a local food truck, again, so that folks have an opportunity to kind of have some food in that kind of casual family setting that we're looking for. There is a cost for that. Part of what we're doing to incentivize attendance at some of these events is actually distributing meal vouchers. So the cost to us as it relates to the chicken truck would be $500. Again, there's no cost associated with the First Alliance. There's no cost associated with the Dauphin County rental agreement, but there is a $500 cost as it relates to the.
I noticed that the owner of the chicken truck, his last name is Devour. Unless I'm misreading that.
So,
Okay, is there a motion on all three contracts?
even if it's not true, it should.
So move.
Second.
Move to second. Any comment? Yes.
I have a question. Why the chicken truck? I mean, how was that selected as opposed to other food trucks? Did we look at other?
Yeah, if you want to answer this.
The chicken truck has been used at other events in the township. Our consultant selected them.
Recommended them, I guess, yeah.
They recommended them as an option and
okay.
has worked with them in the past. So.
I never heard of them, so.
Yeah, they don't just do chicken. They also offer burgers and I think ribs. I think they had something like or pork sandwiches, something. So there's a variety of food that they offer.
Thank you. Just curious.
Yeah, Betsy, do you want to talk about the survey as well, the kind of other outreach piece that I think is going to be released this week? We can, again, distribute that to the commissioners.
We just got the consultants just finished the survey. I got the link to it this afternoon, so I've updated the township's website as far as the comprehensive plan page. I'll send out the link to the survey so you guys can post that on any type of social media or outreach you have to your constituents.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Some of us jumped in on that.
It's about 20 questions.
right there with you.
It's fairly quick to do, and we want both residents and people who work in the township to take the survey. So. We also will be offering 10 $50 gift cards for people who take the survey and provide their email address for updates. So there's a chance to win a $50 gift card when you take the survey.
We included in that survey.
I got a feeling.
You definitely need to take the survey. However, employees and township appointed officials, as well as elected officials, are not allowed
You'll have to settle for the
apply
chicken
for
truck.
the-
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get a voucher.
We're good. All right.
Okay. So I'll send that out to you as well this evening with all the information. All right.
Thanks, Betsy. All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the 3 agreements as postured by Mr. Kratzer. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So, on the ordinances, resolutions, subdivisions, land development plans, ordinance 18-06, which would amend the Code of Ordinances of Susquehanna Township, setting recycling requirements for community activities. Ms. Logan?
Hey, good.
Forgot it was right after. This is an ordinance amending our current recycling ordinance to allow or to require recycling at any community event that has over 200 people at it. So as I think we discussed before, we will make sure that the school is aware of the new requirement, and for any event that requires a permit or a street closure, Johnine will make sure to include that in her letter. So, and as we said before, this is part of a DEP's requirement for approval of a 902 grant that we have this.
When would it go into effect?
I mean, it would.
Like, are we giving a grace period or whatever? I mean,
I think,
I'm just asking
yeah,
because,
I
like, the
think technically it
Mayfair,
would
for
go
example.
into effect immediately, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's. we
Okay,
need
as
time
long as
to-
there's.
Yeah. I mean, as part of the grant application, which was submitted last week, we had to indicate when it would be adopted and what the text amendment was.
Okay.
So I'm sure we can provide a grace period for people to be aware of it. I do know when we were touring Fort Hunter, they do have recycling services already. So when we have our open house event, we'll be able to provide this.
Betsy, you talked a little bit about, I guess, the get at mechanism there is, I guess, if there's a street closure. Are there other ways to try to encourage people to do this?
Yeah, I mean, we don't require a permit for special events, so I think it's going to be somewhat hard to educate people on that. Other than we can put something in the newsletter and obviously on our website with that information, and then trying to think of other than obviously we have the baseball softball opening day. That's not going to be able to qualify yet, but we'll make sure that they're aware in the future that needs to occur.
And of course the website. But I just wonder if we might be able to send, even to churches,
we can do
a
that.
copy of this.
Yeah.
It just really bugs me when I'm at even like a church fair or festival or whatever, and people are throwing away aluminum cans, considering the value, and it just,
Completely understand.
filling our landfills with, actually usable materials.
Well, and the township does, I mean, the more we recycle, the more money that the township will receive in grants from the state. So we definitely want to encourage both commercial and residential to recycle, because that helps us as a township. So.
Thank you for pursuing.
And historically, I mean, just to provide some perspective, historically, this township has been a very high performer as it relates to recycling, and some of that is a function of the structure of your trash and recycling contract that you have. But I think there's an overall commitment to recycling in the community as well.
So does this require an advertisement?
It was already, at your prior meeting, you had authorized both the notice of intent to adopt, so that has already been published.
Okay,
So this is before you for your consideration
adoption.
and potential action.
Same with 1807, right?
That is correct, yep.
Okay. All right, is there a motion on ordinance 1806?
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
I'll
Got that,
second.
Janine?
I think Commissioner Pine moved. I seconded.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And ordinance 1807, the aforementioned, amending the Code of Ordinances for Susquehanna Township, setting rules and requirements for the dedication of streets and the submission of plan.
this is an ordinance that we prepared to amend the streets and sidewalks ordinance. It would provide structure as to how we would adopt public streets for the township, as well as some criteria if private streets are being requested for adoption. There's certain qualifying criteria that they would have to meet. There's, as far as adoption, it discusses the requirement for bonding, as well as plans and what needs to be on the plans before anything is adopted by the township. So it's just kind of to formalize our process.
Right, so many of these requirements are requirements that the township has historically required anyway. It's just codifying these. They were more kind of administrative practice. Kind of nuance, or the new aspect relates to these private streets that potentially could be offered for dedication. But again, recognizing that those streets have to meet certain criteria and standards. And it outlines those criteria and standards.
All right. Is there a motion on the floor?
I move that we adopt this.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
I just have a quick comment. Oh, go ahead.
I just would like to thank the staff for their work on this. This up because of a street in. I think it's an amazingly thorough job to look at overall picture in the entire township. Develop this ordinance, so I thank you.
And I just want to echo Commissioner Rothrock's comment. This is one of the first issues I dealt with when I was elected. And I have, in Ward 8, we have several HOAs. And so, with private streets. And so this was one of the first issues I needed to explore. And it's nice to finally have some clear guidance in terms of, okay, if you do live on a private street, this is what's required if you want to seek to dedicate your road. So thank you so much for your work on this.
My pleasure.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you, Betsy. All right, next up is Richard C. Angino. Final subdivision plan for the purpose of subdividing one existing 3.062 acre parcel into two separate lots. Mr. Rohr.
You want to keep going?
Your turn.
It's in the first ward. The property is located at 4503 North Front Street, Zone Commercial Office Limited. Plan was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, contingent on the approval of the following waivers: to waive the preliminary plan requirement, to waive the requirement for markers and monuments, to waive the requirement for street width, waive the requirement for curbing, and to waive the requirement for sidewalk on Miller's Lane. The Planning Commission voted to deny the request to waive sidewalk on Front Street.
We have a motion on the waiver requests.
I move to approve the waivers as suggested.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Planning Commission Planning Commission also attached the following conditions for approval of the plan. Provide a letter from Dauphin County Conservation approving the erosion and sedimentation control plan. Provide ownership and management requirements on the plan for the shared access drives and shared parking areas. And lastly, to satisfy all remaining HRG, Dauphin County, and Township staff comments.
Okay, is there a motion on the plan with those three conditions?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any comment?
Mr. President, I believe there's somebody here that wants to speak about the denial of the one waiver. Perhaps you should address that before you address the plan approval.
Well, this has been moved and seconded, and we're past that order of business.
Okay.
Am I wrong? I mean, I can extend a courtesy to the floor, but that's been decided. Am I wrong?
Do you have any guidance on that, or?
No, you're right. You've moved past that.
We not only moved past the approval of the waivers, we have moved and seconded the plan. And it's up for discussion on the plan itself. So if the matter has to do with the plan itself, we'd be happy to consider that. Otherwise, I think it would be out of order. But I'm willing to extend a courtesy to the floor.
Perhaps for the sake of thoroughness, the courtesy may just to understand where views can differ. If we can maybe resolve this in an open forum, maybe it's.
Okay. Understand, Janine, we've already made the motion and the second on the plan. Okay? With the three conditions that were outlined. So who would like to speak?
I would.
State your name and
Yes.
address. And
Richard Angino. and I'd like to pass some documents up to you.
Okay.
I've made 7 copies, so there should be one for everybody.
Thank you. For me, Jens.
And Mr. Angino, you don't intend to go through this entire memo, right? Just a brief?
No.
Okay.
The memo was intended for the solicitor to discuss with the members here. It's a legal memo, so I don't plan to go through a legal memo. But I would like to give some history.
Yeah, if you can keep it to 3 minutes, please. That's what we allowed during public comment.
All right. We have been a citizen since 1979 when we acquired 4503 North Front Street. Since that time, I hear all this talk about money, which is important, and we have paid taxes of $50,000 a year for more than 30 years now, so millions of dollars. What I'm suggesting is for years we were expanding. So we started with a building that had gone through Agnes and Eloise, and rather than leaving it as an abandoned building, we built the building. Then as we expanded, we built buildings in the back. We eventually were 20,000 square feet. What's happened is we've downsized now. The back buildings have not been used for 10 years. So the purpose of dividing it is to be able to sell the back building. There are no improvements to be done here. The law is clear. Number one, we're grandfathered in from back in 79 and 86 and 89 and 95. So we've been before you, and there was never a requirement for a sidewalk in these years. There's a doctrine in the law called grandfathering in. You cannot require something today when it's been different for all these years. There's also another doctrine called spot zoning. The pictures that I've given you show the properties along Front Street, virtually all of which do not have a sidewalk. So it would be spot zoning for you to require a sidewalk to go past my property when there aren't sidewalks in other places. Another thing, too, is it's onerous because our sign for Angino and Rovner is where a sidewalk would go. There's also shrubbery there that's been there for 50 years. You can't actually go through 50-year-old shrubbery to put in a sidewalk. Finally, there are pillars that have been there since the mansion was built in 1906, so that to require a sidewalk would be illegal, unconstitutional, onerous. So what we're asking you as a good citizen that we have been is to follow the Constitution and not demand spot zoning. That's my discussion. Okay?
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Angino. It is kind of a moot point at this point because we've already gone through the waivers requested. And the one that you're requesting for the sidewalk was not approved. Now we've moved on to the plan. There's already been a motion and a second to approve the plan with the 3 conditions. Sidewalks are not part of that motion. Second. So I understand your argument. I appreciate your being here all these years and contributing so much to the community, but it's just not something legally and procedurally we're in a position to address right now.
I don't understand why you cannot consider my request to waive the sidewalk.
Okay, let's,
Call the question.
there's been a motion to approve the plan with the 3 conditions. Need to read them again, or no?
No.
And it does not include a sidewalk waiver for Front Street. So, is there any discussion among board members on the motion and the second issue before us? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on. Susquehanna Union Green.
Good evening again. Susquehanna Union Green is a preliminary land development and subdivision plan for the purpose of creating a mixed-use traditional neighborhood development. The proposed plan will include commercial and office uses, a hotel, senior living residential complex, and 31 single-family homes. The property is located at the southeast corner of North Progress Avenue and Lingelstown Road and is zoned Traditional Neighborhood Development 1. Associated design guidelines are included as per the requirements of the TND1 district. The design guidelines provide characteristics and design features for the buildings and streetscape to achieve a vital community with a definitive character. The township has been working with the Vartan Group over the last several months. In addition to having 5 design review committee meetings, we've had 3 meetings with the applicant and the township engineer to review the plans. As a reminder, it's been a while since you guys have looked at a preliminary plan. A preliminary plan is generally intended to provide a more general plan of development, including phasing. The final plan is what will provide the specific details for the immediate development. This plan, if the plan is approved as a preliminary plan, you will see each phase individually for the final plan approval. I think Fred Bonsi's here to give an overview of the project, and then we can go over the approval.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. I won't steal Ralph's thunder. I'll let him introduce himself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Valor.
Kiss up. Brief Ralph.
So nice to see everybody again. Because we did do a high-level overview of the project at the board's last workshop meeting, I thought I would not repeat that if that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
Great. In addition to all the members of the project team whom I introduced at the last presentation, we're also joined by Fred Bonsi today. I'm kind of honored to introduce him to you and have him here. Fred is the eponymous, so one of the partners of LaQuatra Bonsi, and they're a wonderful firm. We've enjoyed working with them a lot on this project up to this point. Jeremy Brown from LaQuatra Bonsi, who's one of the project managers who did a presentation for us at the last meeting, is here. I do note that there are some members of the public here with us, so if it's your pleasure, I'd be happy to turn the dice over to Jeremy and have him simply point out the key features of the plan, and I'll defer to how you would like to spend the time for this agenda item today. Shall we?
Let's just try to
Okay.
We'll try
Moving
to
right along.
move along.
Commissioners, thanks again for having us back, and I know we got long-winded last time, so hopefully you have a good memory, and we'll walk right through everything at a faster pace. If you recall, a lot of the backbones of this plan surrounded by the idea that we're respecting some of the natural ecologies of the site, the topography, the existing vegetation, the ecosystems that are there. There's some concerns about groundwater recharge and how we deal with that. We're trying to keep these natural systems in place, which is what sets up sort of through Black Run there. And we also have some wetlands that go up in the topography of the space. This is actually kind of like a little valley that goes up in the middle. So those are being preserved as our open spaces. A couple key open spaces. We have the main green that's just out of my shadow reach up there. We have another main common green space. We also have another key space. This is down here in our senior living facility. So obviously, with respect to the corner, the idea when this was laid out, after looking at sort of the topography, the ecology, the natural systems of this space, was to figure out how this can be a true TND. We talk about that traditional neighborhood development and how we're not trying to internalize this space. The goal is actually for this community to knit in and of and around the space There was even some discussion last time. There's a road connection, obviously, to the development over here. We are creating a signalized intersection down here that reaches out and across the street. There is a sidewalk, a multimodal bike walking path that surrounds the entire edge of the site, going up Progress and down Linglestown. Bike sharrows that go a shared road for cycling and biking, and paths that goes down our main sort of stretch of the street there. So these are critical connectors for us in creating this walkable community. Quick overview for those that haven't seen it before, talking about our different spaces. Down here in yellow is our residential area. So these are single-family homes. Most of them are loaded via alleys so that we're keeping the homes tighter. We're not having those garage doors face to the front. We bring all the buildings out here as we move up, and we're getting into sort of mixed-use space. A commercial stretch, and I'm not tall enough. Maybe if I move away there. Right there down the center is what we call sort of a muse address. This is where all of our shops, our restaurants will open out into sort of a pedestrian alley, a pedestrian zone space, and carry you down to that main green space. Again, TND, so you'll notice all these buildings are pushed out into the edges sort of the buildable property lines, and that's where I'll just walk us through. I know some waivers are of probably the utmost concern tonight, and we want to make sure we cover all of those. One of them talks about a sidewalk waiver. What that sidewalk waiver is specifically, if we look down here along the inside of the road, there are a couple key things. If you remember, we discussed last time. This is a naturally sensitive area with the wetlands in here. This road alignment stems from a connection down here for a property to the south. Obviously want to tie in. But then we're also trying to cross a creek at the most ecologically sensitive place, where there's the fewest old growth trees, where we have to disturb the least amount of soil. And so here along the inside, where we've deemed it unnecessary for a sidewalk, the reasons being, as people circulate down here, we have a path on one side, but remember our residential housing unit people can circulate, and there is a path that connects them directly to the downtown core of the development. So really it's sort of this superfluous extra sidewalk. Getting rid of the sidewalk is not about saving money. Getting rid of the sidewalk means we have 10 feet less of grading, which means we're not pushing 10 more feet of soil down the hill into sort of our ecologically sensitive area. So that was our request for the waiver. We don't think it's appropriate there professionally as landscape architects. And our recommendation of the client, recommendation that went to the city and on to you guys in the form of a waiver. Site triangles are another one. In our traditional neighborhood development, properties get pushed up to the corners. That's about narrowing down the streets. Inevitably, that's going to happen. It's a product of design. We're having cars move more slowly through this space, just as the third and other waiver is the new street sections where our streets are narrower. This reduces crossing widths for pedestrians, which is important to us. As streets get narrower, we know drivers drive slower through these spaces. That's important to us. We want people to slow down. We'd rather have people walking through this development and prioritize pedestrians, prioritize cyclists, rather than the vehicles themselves. So those are the addressing the three waivers. I'm happy to kind of expand upon it more if you guys would like to. If you have any questions, please ask.
Right here.
Mentioned. Yeah.
Silly question. Are these publicly dedicated streets or privately dedicated streets?
We will have, fill me if I make any mistakes, Ralph. We're going to have the main public street go through this main swath. As you come down and around, this will be public as well. Coming out here, this entrance goes, and as it meets the main road, is public. And are we swooping around the main green as well? So this, and the connection to Sturbridge. Connecting out and Sturbridge. So your main bones, basically you're getting cut off. Like as you enter into the parking lot space, you're getting into private. Okay. This little connection is private, otherwise public.
Let me refocus the question. If the streets are going to be narrow,
yes,
and they're going to be publicly dedicated, are they going to be plowable? And will they be large enough for emergency vehicles?
Absolutely.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for drawing on.
Got it. Thank you.
Just as a way of a comment, you talked about wanting a sidewalk waiver there off to the right side, lower right, and the loop. And I think it's important to know two things. Number one, you have a sidewalk on the opposite side, I think, as you probably said, but just to reemphasize. But also, it has been pointed out to us that there is a walkway that provides a great alternative to even making that walk out there anyway, to go from one neighborhood to the other, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the ideal path is actually not to go down there and along the street.
I think that's an important distinction to make. You know, when we go to approve sidewalk waivers, we become a lot more conscientious about sidewalks and sidewalk waivers. But in this case, it's very appropriate, very rational.
And there's also, we have talked about, I pointed out this critical connection. There is this network, a path that circulates through the space as well. So there are additional walking paths within the development, slightly offsetting this. Any other questions, comments? Thanks so much.
So I'll just go through the technical part of the waivers really quick. The Planning Commission reviewed the plan as well as the waivers at their meeting on February 26th. They recommended the following, that the design guides and plans are approved contingent on the following waivers. Waive the sidewalk requirement on one side of the street along a approximately 800-foot portion of Hawthorne Circle between the trails across from the senior living access drive to the beginning of the first lot in the single-family residential area. 2, waive the requirements for the clear sight triangles. 3, waive the requirements for designating the parcels of land intended for dedication / public use in the associated ownership and maintenance plan to the final subdivision plan. And 4, waive the requirement for street width, section widths. So it's just it's reducing. They're still required to have street section widths.
President?
Mr. Engel.
Move to approve the plan with the 4 waivers.
Second.
The preliminary plan.
Yes.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any comment?
Just, Mr. President, I just want to reemphasize that I appreciate, and I'm sure many other board members do as well, the amount of public input, the amount of meetings, and the amount of real impressive work, in my opinion, that went into this plan. It's a big part of our township, but I'm looking at it and thinking that it's going to become almost a center of our township. And I appreciate the work that staff has done and that the applicant has done. And it's something we can be proud of, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to echo that, and Mr. Vartan, you and your team have done an outstanding job in this whole process, and I think it's something we as township commissioners can be ultimately extremely proud of, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I would like to recognize the design committee as well. This was a unique, as far as I know, approach to this project where we actually engaged our own architect to help us review the plan, and there was a lot of good back and forth between the design review committee and the developer, and I think the result, as Ralph has said before, is a highly improved product that I think everybody's going to be really happy with. I'd like to commend that whole approach. I just thought that was really a good way to go, especially when we have a property of this size, with this kind of impact on our township.
And just to clarify, that the motion made by Mr. Engel is to approve the waivers, the 4 waivers as outlined here, not to approve the preliminary plan.
Correct.
Okay. Second. Any other comments? All those in favor of approving the waivers as requested?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The Planning Commission also recommended approval of the preliminary plan, subject to the following conditions, and that's to satisfy all remaining HRG Dauphin County TCA, and township staff comments.
Second.
Okay. Motion is to approve the plan with the, that condition. And that condition says, Betsy, help me, it says satisfied? Is that past tense or is it supposed to be?
Oh, it should be satisfy, yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Some of them have already been satisfied, but
Right.
yeah.
Right. Moved and seconded. Any comment?
I just, for the sake of the public concerns about this project, I'd like to point out that approve a preliminary plan does not require that we have approved highway occupancy permit or an approved sewer module.
That is correct.
So these are concerns that I know the public has. The way our ordinances are written, we do not have to require that approval in order to do a preliminary plan approval.
That's
and
correct.
those things will be addressed and properly handled.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you, Mr. Vartan.
Thank
And
you,
team,
everybody. Thank you to the township
great
staff.
job.
Thank you to the consultants. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
We'll be back soon with final phase 1.
Promise?
My wife wants to know when we can move in.
Oh, there it is.
When she's 30 years old. She'll appreciate that. She'll appreciate that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
At her vote.
Yep. Okay, unfinished business. Do we have any?
We do not, Mr. President.
All right. Mr. Kratzer, on to reports. Do you have any?
I just want to make one just kind of brief mention so the board is aware. And again, this is an issue that we'll hopefully have some conversation moving forward. The township was recently approached by a site acquisition consultant for AT&T relative to the potential placement of a distributed antenna system or a microcell on an existing traffic signal in the township at the intersection of Crooked Hill Road and Gulf Road. As you may recall, the township zoning ordinance was amended in 2016 to address these small cell or microcell cell facilities or wireless facilities. And this is the first one that is, we've had some casual conversations with folks in the past, but this is one that is kind of maturing into a more serious conversation. This is, just to point out, this is a potential revenue source for the township. These are existing township facilities. Again, there's criteria and standard as it relates to both the visual appearance of these facilities, as well as you would imagine, considerations related to wind resistance, structural considerations, those kinds of things. And again, all of that is provided for in the ordinance that this board adopted in 2016. As part of this, I've started to have conversations with Cohen Law Group, which was the same law group that was the author of the wireless facilities ordinance, to assist us with the review and the potential negotiation of a lease agreement with AT&T. I guess I'm seeking ratification of the engagement of Cohen Law Group to assist in the negotiation. Again, all costs associated with this, both legal costs, signal modification cost, all of that would be borne by the lessee, in this case AT&T. So there will be no direct cost to the township, but it does represent the potential for a potential revenue source for the township. So we're really just making you aware that this conversation is going on. Again, kind of seeking ratification of utilization of Cohen for purposes of assisting us with this, recognizing that the lessee will bear those costs. And then again, a final note would be that the final lease agreement, if there's a lease agreement negotiated, obviously that will come back to the Board of Commissioners, so you will have the ability to review the terms and conditions of the lease, and then you would take separate action on that.
Mark, do we need a motion for that? Or just a public authorization?
Just the public authorization.
Your motion?
Yeah, I move that we authorize Manager Kratzer to engage Cohen Law Group.
Second.
Second, any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Gulf Road.
It's near the Post office, actually.
Yeah.
So opposite of the post office. See you guys. Beyond that, Mr. President, that is all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Mendauer, do you have anything for us?
No, Mr. President.
School Board, Commissioner Fleming?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of quick notes. The Pennsylvania Department of Health has new guidelines relative to vaccines students should receive and by what ages those vaccines should occur. That information can be found on the township website, or I'm sorry, on the school district's website, hannahsd.org. At the March 2nd school board meeting, staff presented information. School district staff presented information on a response to a potential active shooter incident. Unfortunately, that's part of reality these days. This district is working with our police department to ensure accurate, quality training of those sorts of situations. So that concludes my report.
Good. Thank you. Authority, Commissioner Sanderson.
Yes, very briefly. The authority refinanced some money and saved $5 million in hard cash. That's not soft money, it's real dollars. Thank you.
More detail, please. More detail. In the newsletter, huh?
In the newsletter.
Okay.
Attaboy there.
No, seriously, $5 million. So, I mean, it was oversubscribed. They wanted us to borrow $123 million because there was so much demand for the rate for the bonds, but we decided, well, that might be a little too much. So we went with the 5 and made a lot of savings on the interest. So thank you.
George Burns is alive. Wow. Catskills. All right. Commissioner Barczyk is away. Do we have anything on Indian Wheels or the Shade Tree Commission?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. President.
Okay. Communications?
No report.
Nothing. Okay. New business. We still have those 2 vacancies. The Recreation at Large and what's the other one, Mr. Kratzer?
The other is the Shade Tree Commission.
Shade Tree. Anything bubbled up?
Nothing. We've received nothing at this point. Again, we're just kind of keeping this on the agenda so that we don't lose sight of it. That's all.
Storm or sanitary? Okay. And the other new business is subcommittee to review consult proposals, stormwater management utility fee.
Yeah, so this is a conversation that the township has had periodically, I guess, over the course of the past, perhaps, year and a half to 2 years. Part of this discussion is coming from the Budget and Finance Committee and some of the discussion that occurred at that committee level. What this would do is potentially engage a consultant for purposes of looking at the potential establishment, and again, I stress the potential establishment of a stormwater management authority and then the associated utility fee to fund stormwater improvements throughout the township. As the board is aware, there's a lot of mandates that the township has to deal with as it relates to stormwater. There's a significant investment that's going to be required in order to meet your obligations under the total maximum daily load for Paxton Creek. But beyond that, there's also stormwater concerns throughout this entire township. Facilities that need to be retrofitted, aging infrastructure, all of which come at not insignificant costs. So staff has sought proposals from firms that have expertise in assisting municipal entities through this discussion. We have 3 at this point, and we're looking at perhaps engaging in a more detailed conversation with members of the Board of Commissioners, are seeking volunteers, if you will, to serve in both review of those proposals and kind of review of the potential.
I'm sure it shocks you to find out that I'd be happy to volunteer. I've been talking about this for 5 years.
I'd like to volunteer as well.
Brett, I would like to.
That's 3 or 4 is great, so that's all.
I learned in the military, never volunteer for anything.
You can follow up in an email. Okay.
You're already.
Okay, so for those folks, we can reach out and perhaps schedule a time that we can get together and start the process of a little bit more detailed discussion. And obviously, everything will be brought back to the.
Commissioner Barczyk and Johnson also volunteered.
Unfortunately, that'll push us over 5, and that will be a quorum of this body. So.
All right, the Mr. Urban. There we go. Okay, let's get this started. Commissioner comments. Anybody wish to
President?
comment? Yes.
Mr. President, probably a lot of people might have escaped them, but because of the population, the diversity, and especially the Jewish population of Susquehanna Township, I want to point out that at sundown today, Yom HaShoah ended. And, you may not know that. I wasn't aware of it until I found out just a few days ago. It's a Jewish commemoration of the Holocaust Remembrance Day. Not just in a ceremonial sense, but I think in a real sense, we need to remember the Holocaust. I mean, if you're a person who prays, you should pray that the Holocaust has never happened again. If you teach, as a parent or a teacher, you should teach about the Holocaust so that we don't forget. I had an uncle who was among the army troops that liberated the death camps in Germany at the end of World War II, and he never forgot about it. As much as he might wish he could, he never forgot. And in the same fashion, we must never forget. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Pine.
Mr. President, just to touch on that as well, I was honored this morning to participate in a reading of names of victims of the Holocaust. And I want to thank Lily and Ira Rappaport for affording me that opportunity at Ohev Shalom this morning. And what I was struck by was, and I don't know if I'd heard this and forgot, there were so many children who died as part of the Holocaust and just the horrific activities associated. And it was extraordinarily sobering and very, very moving, very emotional for me and should be for all of us. So, again, I'd like to thank Lillian and Ira Rappaport. They're residents of my ward, and for that opportunity, and it's something I'll never forget. So thank you, Commissioner Pine, for raising it. And again, I couldn't agree more. We need to remember our history, or we'll be doomed to repeat it. So thank you, Mr. President.
Other comments before we move on to pay bills? Is there a motion to approve the report of bills paid?
Mr. President, I make the motion to approve the report of bills paid in the amount of $717,141.36.
Second. Light month. Any
Yeah.
comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.